All right, welcome to our October workshop here. Looking forward to getting that kicked off shortly, but a couple of announcements first. For all of you who are here, you've all found us by going to the website and registering, so thank you. I'm sharing that website now as a good way to show what's upcoming and what we have going on. We have a bunch of sessions coming up. And I'll go through those quickly, give everybody a little bit of a heads up as to what to expect coming up in the future here. Starting with, and since it's up on the screen right now, the next thing we have coming up is our quarterly member meetup. So, and this will keep flipping by, but what I'll do is I'll scroll down here. You can always find all of our events on here, as well as our partner events. So if you're looking for things from other groups in the area that do related things, you can find them on here as well and make this your one-stop shopping hub for professional development in the Philadelphia area. I think I'm hearing some feedback from somebody, so let me mute that a second. All right, so as I mentioned, our next thing is our members only quarterly meetup. One of the hosts for that is also our producer for this evening, Mark. Hi, Mark. So good opportunity to come out. Mark and his co-host Liz have some questions prepared that they'll ask, give people good things to discuss, get to know each other. We've been doing and will continue to do some in-person networking, but if you don't want to leave the house and worry about having to put on things with zippers, then this is your opportunity to be able to talk to some people. So that will be next Monday. Then we have in November coming up, we've got Being a Great Trainer Isn't Enough with Keith Eikenberry. Going to talk about some of the things that we need to do to promote ourselves, whether you're an internal or an external, to get our programs going. So that's a good one. We do have an opportunity to see the 76ers. We're about to become all of our teams, except we won't mention the Flyers, are hitting on all cylinders right now. And the Sixers are a good time. We did this. We've done this twice now, actually, at the Sixers, where we get tickets in the assembly room, which is at the top of the stadium. Good view, nice lounge, another good networking opportunity. So you have the opportunity to sign up to that and see the Sixers with L&D Philly. And then we have programming into next year already, including we're going to have the Now and Next of Learning and Technology to kick off the year with David Kelly. One programming note I want to make, and I think it may have just popped up in here, for anybody who saw this event previously, it was originally also scheduled for October with Rick Lozano. We've moved it into March. So anybody who was registered, you're still registered, but if you would like to register, you have extra time now. So that's what we've got coming up in the near future. If you aren't already a member, please feel free to consider joining. We're only $25 a year. For that, you also get access to all the workshop recordings, including this one that you're watching now, if you're watching and recording, which just became super meta, but we'll roll with that. And I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors here. So I'll first off, oops, I try to scroll down. I was scrolling through our Twitter feed there as well. Actually, you know what, real quick before I do that, because I scrolled past a couple of things, I want to hit the job board here. Actually, just got a request yesterday for somebody who's going to be posting something shortly here. All members can post jobs to the job board. So if you are hiring and looking for people, it is free. You just have to come in, log into the website as a member and post. Or if you are looking for jobs, we do get jobs posted here. It's a good place to look for opportunities. And now I will get to the sponsors. So first off is our website sponsor. You can find them literally on every page on our website, and it's Judge Learning Solutions. Let's try that again. Judge Learning Solutions. And rather than me talk about Judge, we have Kyle with us tonight. So I'm going to kick it over to Kyle for a minute or two here to tell us about Judge.
Sure, Josh, thank you so much for the warm introduction, and good evening to all of you in attendance. And first and foremost, if you're a Philly sports fan, wow, it's an awesome time. So Josh, I'm really looking forward to that 76ers game, and mingling and networking with like-minded folks in the learning and development industry. So who is Judge? So again, my name is Kyle Allen. I'm an account manager at Judge Learning Solutions. We've been around just about over 35 years. We're a full service learning solutions provider. We specialize in training related staffing, custom learning solutions, instructor-led training for both professional and technical development. We work with over 60 of the Fortune 100. As we all know, learning is industry agnostic. So while we are deeply rooted in the IT and healthcare industries, we work with businesses from all different backgrounds and all sizes. So whether you work in a corporate setting, there's opportunities for us to help support with your L&D initiatives, or whether you're a practitioner or consultant and you're looking for contract work or opportunities to provide instructor-led services. We have clients that are always looking for people like yourself, for professionals like yourself. So either way, I'd love to connect with you. I'll drop my information in the chat box here, some information on how to reach me. We do provide free consultation. So please, by all means, feel free to utilize our services. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you. I was looking for my mute again. All right. And our next sponsor is Degreed, who you will find them in every email we send out each week with all our upcoming programming. They are a weekly email sponsor. Degreed provides a learning experience platform, way to curate your content from different providers and allow the people you support to access them and do all the kind of tracking things that go along with that. They have a skills report that we link in a banner at the bottom of all of our weekly emails. So I encourage you to check that out. And also, lastly, see Training Pros on the screen. They sponsor our job board and they do some placement work as well. You can find out more about them by clicking on their logo. And we thank all of our sponsors because it is our sponsors that allow us to do things like keep our membership to only $25 a year and make our virtual events free for people like you to participate as members, and relatively inexpensive if you have not yet joined. So thank you to our sponsors. Without further ado, we will kick this thing off. I'm going to actually stop sharing and let Bernadette get set up while I am making an intro. So I've known Bernadette for, I'm going to say, years, because I was trying to figure out exactly when. We believe that, or at least my memory tells me that, and that's not getting any better, but my memory tells me that we crossed paths originally at an ATD conference for chapter leaders. Once upon a time, before this current venture, I was a board member in an ATD chapter, and that's where we met. Bernadette has continued to be active with ATD chapters and currently chapter advisor board. I'm getting that sort of right, I think.
Kind of, sort of.
Okay. I know the names. I'm out of the hierarchy now, so I don't have that. But anyway, we've met and continued to cross paths at conferences and otherwise professionally over the years. And this last May, we were down at the ATD conference in Florida, and L&D Philly held an open house with Bernadette joined us, and we got talking, and she said she had some interesting topics that our members might be interested in. And I said, you know what, that sounds interesting. I agreed. So here we are with Stories Your Values Tell You. And with that, I will hand off to Bernadette to talk about what she does, how these stories are going to impact us, and how we can all use them to our benefit.
All right. Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with all of you this evening about a topic that's really kind of important to me and also important to the work that I do in my consulting and my coaching around values and the importance that the stories that we tell about ourselves, of how those values are really kind of embedded in those stories. So before we get started, I am going to ask each of you to just get comfortable wherever you are and close your eyes. We don't have to do this for long, just close your eyes. Once upon a time. So when you heard me say those words, what were kind of the first thoughts or the first feelings that you had? And you can just go ahead and put your comments in chat. You can come off of mute and share. What is your first thought or your first feeling when you were sitting there with your eyes closed and I said, once upon a time? What's next? Story time. The story. Okay, fairy tale, elementary school books. So when you think about those stories or those school books or those fairy tales or those fables, is there one that comes to your mind that just kind of pops up that you remember more than others? You could put whatever that title is in chat, or you can come off of mute and share as well. Is there one that really, really resonates that you automatically think about? Three Little Bears, Little Red Riding Hood. There's some good ones. Just give people another chance to put some more ideas in chat. So just fairy tales in general. Okay. Snow White. Yeah. So whenever we think about Once Upon a Time in these stories, it really kind of harkens back to a time where we think about a specific story. And oftentimes those stories have lessons in them like fables do. And it really has something embedded in it that really resonates with us. And the stories that we tell about ourselves as we become adults also resonate with stories and with values that are embedded in those stories as well. And, as all of us are L&D professionals, coaches, we all know how important values can be and the importance of them. And so when we think about leadership development or coaching, oftentimes we have people do some values assessment. We'll have them do like a card sort. We'll have them do something online. We may give them a sheet of paper. We may ask them to kind of circle their top values. And then it's kind of set aside. And oftentimes people come back, they may not really remember what those values really are. And so it really makes it important when you're doing kind of leadership development, you're doing coaching, to help people really kind of remember what those values are that help them during times when they're dealing with a difficult situation, a difficult conflict, when they need to make a decision. It really helps them be able to do a decision, make a decision that's aligned with those values. And the reason that I really hooked onto this idea was I was having a coaching client that was really struggling with having to make a really difficult decision. And she was really, really stuck. And I asked her in one of our coaching sessions just to think about to tell a story about a time where she had to make a really difficult decision, and then talk about that situation, talk about how she decided what she was going to do. And it was during that process of listening to her story that she became very, very clear about what was important to her, what her values were, and then was able to kind of apply those values to her current situation and really find her way out of being stuck. And so from that situation or from that client interaction, it really made me think about, what is it about personal values that are so important? And I have just a couple of quick videos that I want to share with you. So just bear with me.
So what is the alignment between, how important is the alignment between personal values, current culture of the organization, desired culture? The alignment is important because when you have that alignment, it actually releases commitment, enthusiasm, creativity, because you're able to come to the organization each day and you don't have to park your personal values in the car park with your car. You can actually walk into the building and be who you truly are. And when you have to park an aspect of yourself outside of the building, one becomes schizophrenic. And so you come into the organization with a facade, but it's difficult to maintain that facade because what happens is you get frustrated. you become angry. Because guess what? You're misaligned. There's a misalignment between your ego and your soul, who you really are and who you think you're expected to be. And so can you have high performance in that situation? No. You can't have high performance because you're continually regulating yourself to make sure you don't step out of bounds. In other words, fear is kicking in and holding you back from being who you really are. So that's why alignment is important. You want to feel, when you walk into the workplace, that you can be fully who you are, so you can explore every aspect of your own being and give your gift to the organization. So what is the alignment between,
All right.
how important is the alignment between?
All right. So when you think about that short clip about personal values and how those help you show up in all of the different places in your life, in your work life, in your personal life, what really kind of stuck out for you when you were listening to that video? Anybody willing to come off of mute and so we can hear a voice?
I'll contribute here. First thing that came to mind is if I'm doing that, if I'm putting on a facade and everyone else is putting on a facade, how do we ever really know each other and really connect?
That is a great point. Yeah. I mean, what's really real? So Margie says to be yourself at work. Do you want to say a little bit more about that, Margie?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, as the I think the gentleman was saying in the video, you want to be your full self at work. You don't want to leave yourself in the car before you walk into the workplace. You want to be able to be yourself and be accepted for who you are in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anybody else have any other thoughts?
I'll talk.
Sure.
I am aware of the fact that, some of the values that you had, some of them were almost imposed by your family.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found is you have to be open to reassessing those values, because sometimes you really need to change them.
Mm-hmm. Or identify what they really are for you outside of that family. Absolutely. And you're right, Trish, it is really, really stressful to try to figure out, how do I need to show up? And when you're showing up and it's not really who you are, it does really create a lot of stress. And so having that alignment about what your values are and what's really important to you really has an impact on how you interact with other people and how you show up day to day. It also makes a huge difference on how you make decisions. So in organizations, in leadership development or in coaching, a lot of that work is around helping people make decisions or making decisions that are important to them. And if you're really kind of making decisions that are really not in alignment with your values, it can really, really create, just as Trish says, a lot of stress and just a lot of anxiety and just wondering, what is really real. So I'm going to go back to Richard Barrett because he has a really interesting idea in thinking about when you're making decisions, the importance of making values-based decisions. So I'm going to go back to this.
BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers phone, video, and live chat sessions with your therapist.
Your question is, what is the difference between decision-making using values and values-based decision-making? I would say there's not a lot of difference between the two. I would say there's more of a difference between values-based decision-making and what I call belief-based decision-making. When we make decisions based on our beliefs, it's as if we're using all our past experience and what we've learned to make a decision. It sounds quite attractive. However, we're perpetuating what we believe, which may not be the truth. We're perpetuating ways of making decisions based on the past, not based on what it is that we would like to create. So values-based decision making allows us to sever the link to the past, if it's appropriate, and then make a decision based on what is it that I want to experience in the future. In other words, what is it that I want to consciously create rather than subconsciously create? Because sometimes a lot of the belief-based decision making that we use has these fear-based beliefs attached to them in a subconscious way, and so we're actually just perpetuating the old state. So what values-based decision making allows us to build a gap between the past and the future, so we consciously create the future that we want to have happen. And in fact, what we're actually doing is saying, I want to experience this feeling. When you've got a list of values, what you're saying is, I want to experience this value viscerally by creating the conditions where I can live that value and have the feeling of honesty, have the feeling of integrity, have the feeling whatever the value that you chose. So that's why it's important, because it allows us to be very adaptable, but to live in harmony with who we are.
All
The
right.
question is, what?
So when you think about that values-based decision-making rather than belief-based decision-making, what insight did you have in hearing Barrett kind of put words to that distinction?
I think that that's what I was talking about.
So same-
Yeah, the beliefs from your family that you sort of, they're just in you.
Mhm.
And then sometimes as you grow, you bump up against them and you say, hey, that's really not true for me anymore. That's what mama believed. That's what,
Mhm.
sort of the culture of our family believes, but that's not what I really believe and value anymore. So
Mhm.
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah,
It's a great
absolutely.
distinction he made.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts about thinking about using your values as a way of making decisions for the way you want to feel and think in the future?
I can share something here. I read a story, I think that was published recently about a utility. I work in the water utility, and there was a water utility up in Vermont, and this particular town, I don't remember the name of it. How you put fluoride in water, and this particular gentleman or operator, water operator, didn't believe that fluoride should be put into the water. So he made a decision not to do that, to go against really what EPA was saying was you're supposed to put fluoride in water for health. So he chose, and again, I don't know if it was a value or belief, but I think his value or his belief was that I don't think fluoride should be in water. So it was really an unethical decision, because he, shouldn't have done that. I mean, because the town and the industry says you should put X amount of fluoride in water, and he chose to go against that.
Mhm. So do you think that he was making a belief-based decision or a values-based decision?
That's a good question. I mean, I guess he believed, for whatever his research about fluoride, whether right or wrong, he didn't believe that it should be put into the water. I don't know, for a value, I think of a value as integrity and honesty. I would have thought he would have stuck with, had he put the fluoride in, he would have been a decision based on his values. That's my thought. I don't know enough about it.
Okay.
That's my.
All right. All right. Anyone else have anything about this?
I like what he said there about thinking about how you want to feel. And so if you're making a decision and during that process, you're thinking about how do I want to feel? And you're factoring that into your decision, you're likely not going to have any surprises. How many of us have made a decision and then later you're like, oh my God, I had no idea it was going to be like this. I'm not happy.
Yeah,
Right. So
absolutely.
this is not a full guarantee, but more assurance that you'll be making the right decision because it will allow you to feel the way you want to feel.
Okay. Anyone else? So when you think about times where you have been in a difficult situation, where you've had to make a tough decision, there are times when we have those scenarios that we look back and we think, yeah, I would make the exact same decision. And then we also have times where we kind of get into these, we just relive the decision over and over and over and over again in our head and really feel unsettled about it, that there's just this sense that there's not something quite right, that we just are reliving it in our heads, kind of like having these TiVo moments over and over and over again about a decision that we've made. And so most of us have had experiences with both of those kinds of decisions and the results that decisions have made, kind of where we feel really great and aligned, and times where we feel really not aligned at all and feeling really out of sorts with that decision. And so after I read or listened to Richard Barrett's videos, and I had some experience kind of doing some work with clients around their own stories and how that might help them with their decisions, I really wanted to kind of figure out, okay, so what is it about stories that make a difference for us? And so when I did some research on, really what is it about stories? When you think about the history of stories, at the very beginning, we did that once upon a time. But if we go back even farther, we can really even think that stories and storytelling is just really part of our DNA. I mean, the stories were being told with pictures and hieroglyphs. They were through gestures, even the Neanderthals, in the caves, you can still see that people were trying to tell a story. They were trying to get something across. And then it evolved eventually into being able to do that through words rather than gestures and just pictures. And then it kind of went through writing so that we were able to write things down. And then it really it wasn't just about the oral history. It was also about the written history that we could take with us. So we have a long history as people of the importance of that, what stories mean to us. Then there was this idea of looking at some research, and there's a person named Peg Newhouser. She did a lot of research in science and trying to figure out what is it that helps us be able to remember stories longer and have better recall. And some of the things that she found is that when we are faced with a dilemma where we have to make a decision, that there's kind of two things that happen. There's this cortisol that starts kind of flowing through us. And that's kind of that anxiety, that stress hormone, where we really kind of just we're not really sure what to do. And it really creates a lot of anxiousness. And so when you don't connect values to decisions, that cortisol, and you've got that angst that you still kind of relive it, that cortisol still kind of is still part of that process. And then there are the stories where you feel really good and that you feel confident, you feel like this was the right decision, I feel I would do it again. That's when that kind of that oxytocin and that dopamine start to really kind of go through our bodies, where we really feel connected to our values and we feel really aligned. And that's really kind of the science part of it. And then there's these moments of truth. I mean, most of us can remember times where our backs were kind of against the wall, that we really had to make decisions that were really difficult. Sometimes we made those decisions that were based in fear or those belief-based decisions. Sometimes we did it based on values-based decisions. And then there's this issue of stickiness. Stories give a stickiness to our values when they are aligned. So when we are authentic to our values and we're really self-aware of the situation and what's going on with us, we tend to be able to make decisions that are going to be able to be more aligned, because we're going to have much more optimism. We're going to feel much more resilience. And that's where this resilience is really, really important, because it helps us be able to act in the future. Because we've done it in the past, we know that we can do it again, and we want to be able to do it over and over again. So the whole idea of stories is that we all have stories that we tell about each other, tell about ourselves. And when you think about the pieces of the stories, most of them are about a situation and how we respond. We have feelings afterward and we have feelings now. And so I'm going to tell a story about one that I tell about myself that is often one that is, I like telling about myself because I feel really good about the decision. So in this story, there are characters, and I'm going to ask you to think about who the characters are in just a minute. There's the scene, what's the environment, what's going on. So there's the where, there's the plot, which is what's happening in that situation. Then there's what's the dilemma, what's the discomfort. Okay, so this is the story I like to tell about myself. There was many years ago, some of you may remember that there was this big, huge interest in doing investment clubs, that a whole bunch of people would get together, they would do research around investments, and they would decide where they're going to put their money, and they would do it as an investment club. Well, the church that I belong to started an investment club, and I was on the ground floor of creating that investment club. And we put together kind of our standard operating procedures, kind of our bylaws of how we would operate, how many people we would let in the group, how we would decide to let new people in when people left. And that's kind of a critical piece here. So one of the pieces that's really important is that we decided that as people left, we would invite people who were on the waiting list in the first come, first serve basis to enter the investment club group. So we had been meeting and really kind of chugging along as the investment club for, I'd say, about, maybe 6 months, 7, 8 months. We had a couple of people leave because they relocated, and we were having our investment club meeting in our church, and we were all sitting around the big table in one of the rooms, and the president of the investment club started handing out pieces of paper. And I just said, Andrew, what are the pieces of paper for? Oh, so that's when we're going to vote. And I said, well, what are we voting on? Because it wasn't really kind of in the agenda. And she said, well, we have a couple of people that have left, and we're going to have new people come to the investment club. And we're going to decide who we want to invite into the investment club. And so she got busy doing other stuff, and I'm sitting there thinking, we're not supposed to be voting. I'm having this conversation with myself in my head. We're not supposed to be voting. We said there would just be first come, first serve. And so I just interrupted her and I said, Andrea, when we first developed this club, we decided there was going to be first come, first serve. So I'm not sure why we need to vote on this. And she said, well, there are some people that maybe that may not be, a good fit for the investment club. And so at that point, I had to decide whether or not I was going to go along with that or not. So going back to the stories and kind of thinking about the who, the characters, obviously it's me, Andrea, and the other members of the investment club. So what do you think was the dilemma for me? Who can identify what was the discomfort? What was the dilemma? Anybody have any ideas?
Leaving people out.
Yes, leaving people out. Yes. Anybody else have any other thoughts about what the dilemma might be?
Some form of discrimination.
Yes, absolutely. So I had kind of like all of these thoughts in my head of, well, then how do you tell people what the reason was that they didn't get voted in? And isn't that kind of totally out of sync with what we said we were going to do? And so in my head, I decided that for me, what was at stake, the identity for me that was at stake was my integrity. And so in that situation, I just waited for everybody to kind of get settled because I felt it was important for everybody to hear. So what I said was, I know that there's the plan to vote on having people who we want to have come into the group, the investment club. And that is really not what we agreed upon in our bylaws. There's no criteria to determine who should be in and who should not be in. And I can't participate in a process like this that violates our bylaws and really puts me in a situation where I am discriminating against or I'm leaving somebody out and I'm not aligned with what we said we were going to do. If we said we were going to do it this way, then this is the way we need to do it. And the president, Andrea, said, well, I'm sorry, but the executive team, we all are the people who are the executive officers decided that that's what we were going to do. And so I said, well, if you choose to do that, that is fine. It's really important for you to know that I can't participate in that. And if you do go through with that vote, I am going to withdraw from the investment club. Because what was at stake for me was integrity. And I will tell you, I was totally toast with that, with the people in that group. And it was probably about 3 years later, I had somebody come up to me after the service and say, you were absolutely right at that investment club, that it was going to be what undoes us because of the way that we were letting people in. And it actually ended up having to disband because there was so much conflict and so much animosity. So as you hear me tell that story, how does that resonate with kind of those values-based decisions that Bennett talked about earlier on?
I think what's also coming up for me is it was in a church.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that just made it just like really flagrant
Yeah.
to do something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other thoughts about that? And when I tell that story, I have absolutely no remorse at all. I do not ever wish I had made a different decision. I knew at that moment that I was making the right decision, and I was willing to stand by that to protect my value of integrity. And so when I tell that story, there's just such a resonance when I think about how important that integrity is. And when I make decisions that kind of shortcut integrity, are the decisions that I want to take back. They're the decisions I wish I could do again. They're the decisions that I really, really are not really settled about. So what I'd like to ask you to do, Josh or Mark, could you put that document back in chat again? What I'd like to ask you to do is I want you to think about a story you tell about yourself where you feel so clear and so good about that decision. So think about that story that you love to tell about yourself, where you had a situation. Let's go back to the other slide, where you had something happening. There was a dilemma, and there was something at stake. There was an identity around you that was at stake, and you feel so incredibly good about that decision. So think about that story that you tell. And so when you reflect on your stories, this is what that document, it's a PowerPoint slide. You can go in and you can actually put things in each of those different clouds. I want you to kind of storyboard that story. So just jot down some things about who all was involved. Where was it at? What was the environment? What did the scene look like? What was happening? Kind of what was the action? What was the dilemma? What did you have to decide? And then think about what was at stake for you. So take a few minutes to think about that story and these 5 pieces to that story. So I am going to put you into a breakout group with a partner. And what I want you to do in that breakout group with your partner, I want you each to take maybe about 4 to 5 minutes each, kind of talking about your story, giving all of these pieces, who was involved, what was the scene like, what was the action, what was the dilemma, the decision you had to make, and what was really at stake for you. What was that value that was really underlying what was at stake? And then give each of you about 4 to 5 minutes each, kind of sharing that story together. So Mark or Josh, okay on doing the breakout groups?
Did I hear you right? You said 10 minutes?
Yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, we just wrapped I think I just got it in though, Tanya.
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Sorry, and I said your name wrong again, Tanya.
All right. So how did that feel to tell your story? Hopefully people will come off of mute and share. When you shared that story, how did that feel?
Felt good.
What felt good?
It felt good, liberating, sharing, a story about your values. And in my instance, where my integrity was compromised, revisiting that and being able to share that with Kim felt really good.
Okay, thank you, Kyle. Anyone else?
I would say for Trisha and myself, we both shared stories of our values, like of worth. So know your worth was the thing that really came up actually for both of us, which I thought was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. And so how did it feel when you were telling that story that really kind of capitalizes on your sense of worth?
It's a great question. I think the fact that we listened to our feelings about the situation, right? And we held out for potentially a better choice. So yeah, I would say that.
Yeah, so you didn't have to settle.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same for you as well, Trish, if you don't mind me putting you on the
Yes.
spot.
Yes, I think we had, our stories were different, but
Mhm.
the common theme was we were not going to be disrespected. And we felt we were being, so we made a choice to not continue with that situation. So yeah, it was good to, and we were both like happy at the moment and then happy today about that decision and wouldn't change it.
Okay, all right. So I want to go back to a word that Helen used. It was, how she feels. So values really are feelings. They really, values are kind of feelings personified for us. So that's a really great way to think about it. Thank you for that, Helen. Anyone else? Josh or Tanya? Or Kim or Margie? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah,
Or
I'll
Helen?
go. I had told my story many times before, so it wasn't the story itself, but I never told it that way. And there was an insight that came from that. I realized that it wasn't the decision that I was making where the value was sitting, but it was how I was making the decision. Should I be responsible about making the decision, or should I just go with my heart? So that's an angle, an insight I hadn't really thought about before.
Mm-hmm. And so what value do you think was at play there about how you made the decision?
Of being responsible.
Okay.
That I should not be making a stupid decision and impulsive or, whatever, that I needed to be responsible, to analyze the situation objectively and make the best decision, which was not what I was doing.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you for that.
Yeah, I guess for me, in telling my story, the point that I was trying to make in the story, I think it's very difficult for majority people to understand. And what I tried to do with Margie is to elicit her thought about what was the value.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think it's just really hard. I mean, that's what all this diversity and inclusion is all about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is really, really imagining how it might feel to be the only voice. So anyway, I was hoping that there would be an understanding, and I'm not sure that there was.
Mhm. So is the value for you being heard?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Mhm.
And I think that that is just such a basic value,
Yeah.
but when it comes in different uniforms, different whatevers,
Mhm.
we don't quite hear it the same way.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's it.
Yeah. And, you know, you can have the same value as someone else and
Yes,
define it differently.
yes,
Because respect may mean one thing to me, and respect may mean something very different from you.
Yeah.
Because values, embedded in those values, are a lifetime of our experiences.
yes, 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 yes. And that's why the stories are so important,
Yes,
because they help us
absolutely.
unpack it
Yes.
for others, you know.
Any other insights that any of you might have had that hasn't been talked about or shared? All right, so now it's kind of like there's this kind of so what now, right? So what that, you know, we have people doing these stories. What difference does it, what difference can it really make to us, either as individuals, as coaches, or L&D professionals? So the first one is really kind of about coaching. It really helps as a coach to be able to help people really think about what's getting in the way, what's all the noise that's around this decision that is overpowering the value that is most important to that person. Because oftentimes when people are making a decision and they are stuck, it's oftentimes because there's conflict between what they know that they need in their heart to do versus kind of that belief-based decision making. And it helps people to be able to kind of get them from that belief-based decision making, clarifying what's most important for them, what's at stake for them, and then knowing that, how does that help them be able to make the decision that they need to make for themselves? Then there's also leadership development. So, you know, most organizations or many organizations have some type of leadership development or emerging leaders or some type of professional development where people are really trying to get better at leading others. And one of the things that I have found when we've incorporated stories or values and telling stories, that it helps individuals who are leaders get really clear about what's important to them, what those values are, and how do they make decisions in leading others that are in alignment with those values. So it helps them not only get clear about themselves, it also gets them clear on how they want to show up as a leader and how they want to influence, and also be able to rely back on that when they have to deal with difficult leadership decisions in their organization. And then, you know, lastly, it's really kind of like your storyline. This helps you. Because when you can manage decisions where you're not second guessing yourself, you're not thinking about, I wish I did, why didn't I, that you can walk away with a decision and feel at peace, that you can feel grounded in that decision because it fits in alignment with your values. That really helps you be more present with other people. It helps you be more resilient, And it really kind of helps you in a whole variety of different ways, not only in your organizational work, but also your personal work as well. So this is really one of the ways that I use stories, both in not only professional development for individuals, development for leaders, and also around coaching. And so I always wonder whether I should show this picture at the beginning or at the end. And I just kind of usually just do it at the end, because values really are that light that we look for. The values are really kind of that when we get farther and farther and farther away from that lighthouse and we can't see those values, that's oftentimes when we can get lost. But the closer we get to that lighthouse, the closer we get to that light, the more bright and the more clear that light is for us, which is really our values. The more we find ourselves in that kind of safe harbor of alignment and doing those kinds of value-based decision making that Barrett talks about in that video that we saw at the very beginning. So I am going to stop sharing and just ask, what questions do you have, or what insights, or what things you'd like to share or ask? Yeah, Trish, come off of mute and ask or share.
Yeah, I'm interested as a coach in utilizing this with clients who are trying to decide on career. There are so many people that I coach that just have no idea. And we do some values exercises, and we look at where they have energy, what energizes them, what drains them, what people, what tasks, what environments. Really, it's a process. It's not easy for a lot of people. And I'm just wondering how this storyboarding might be helpful to bring more clarity to what's the right direction for them to go in next.
Yeah, that's a great question and a great thought. Maybe posturing it with, if you could tell the story of your career, how would you tell that story? What would that story be about? Who would you be working with? Where would you be working? What kinds of things would you be doing? So I would ask them to build their own story about, when they look back and they tell the story of their career, what's that story sound like or look like? I don't know if that's helpful, Trish.
Yeah, I see how you're using this more as a visioning exercise there, to have them envision and tell this story back. Yeah. And I see where that does tie in with the feelings, like, how do you want to feel?
Yeah, because when somebody tells a story and it's a story they feel really good about, you can see the joy. You can see that it resonates for them. So I'm just an idea that, that might get you to another place that might be more helpful.
Love it.
What else? Anyone else? About leadership development or just professional development in general, or coaching, maybe a coaching question for those of you who are coaches.
Here's a random question.
Yeah, Mark.
So is it possible, in your opinion, for, let's say, a group, let's say we're all a group and we're going to reset our belief. for the moment together. And then when we all disband, we reset our beliefs, and then that just stays over there, and then our beliefs carry on. So like example would be to create a collective belief just for our time.
Mm-hmm. Like if you were like an intact team or something like that, or maybe just a group.
Or
of
just, I
people.
mean, just in general. So like, so we just spent about an hour trying to
Mhm.
level set on like what the story could do versus your decision process, and how you could use story to help people kind of piece
Mhm.
apart that and elongate that, and then really look at why do we feel that way here and why do we feel that way here. Well, can we create it where, let's say, because then there's like business documents, charters, and all these things, rules around how we should get together. But let's
Yeah.
separate that. And like the video said, put them together, business, personal, it's all the same. So could you come together and then reach that belief in the same kind of way? Have you tried that? Is that something you do, or is that
Yeah,
more of
I-
just
I-
an
I-
individual thing?
No, I think you can actually do it as a collective as well. So when I've done, strategic planning, and people are kind of putting together, what do we want to be about? What are our values? Blah, 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 blah. One of the things that I do is I ask them to draw a picture of what does it look like? What does success look like to you? Or what do you aspire to be as a group, as a team, as an organization? What do you aspire to be? So draw that picture. Do not use any words. I don't let anybody use any words. It all has to be pictures. And when I'm face to face, I've got like all these stickers, and they can use stickers, and they're kind of building their picture. And then I ask everybody to talk about it. And then we talk about, okay, so what are the themes that you heard everyone say? What resonates for all of us? Because that's where you're finding the synergy. And so that's kind of a starting point of developing values. Does that help, Mark?
Yeah, definitely. So I don't want to consume all the time, but
No, it's fine.
is it then easily to diverge, and as everyone's disbanded, switch that off? Because if you need to plan, or you need to do, in your example you just gave, it's easy for us all to say, okay, now we're on board. We understand what the exercise was, and now we're thinking in the same direction.
Mhm.
But can you still do that same effective activity and switch it off, so that we all go back to being our normal selves, and we don't all constantly keep thinking about that strategic plan or whatever the next steps are?
Well, I mean, because I think you can have alignment with organizational values that may not be your top values. However, there is still some connection you have to them. So if there's an organizational value of, say, collaboration, I mean, that might resonate for you because there's another value that very, very similarly connects with collaboration. So collaboration may be the value that you support when you're part of this team. And then when you leave, it may be you may say that value differently. Because connection might be a really important value for you, Mark. And connection and collaboration really do resonate with each other. So the thing is finding common ground among them, which is really important. I think if it's totally out of alignment, I think you're going to probably feel a lot of stress and a lot of, it's really hard to get up every morning and go there. So I think, when you feel that way, that's telling you that there's something that's just not right. There's something not aligned. And so, for example, I mean, I remember being in an organization where I just knew that there was just something not right. And it wasn't until I heard the chief human resources officer for this organization, he was coming in as I was getting ready to go out, and he made the comment, well, we have to figure out how we're going to spin this situation. And I heard that and I thought, that's it. Because it's all about that for him. And that was so totally out of alignment for my values, which is authenticity and transparency and integrity. And spin is, for me, that's not how I define it. So when I heard that, it was like, that's it. That's why. So I'm not sure if that's helpful.
All very helpful.
Okay.
I
All
know I
right.
gave you like a really kind of like a run-on question that was so incredibly
It's okay.
vague, but it was
That's okay.
kind of by intention. I think this kind of captures a lot of like,
Mhm.
we're all looking at it from a different lens. So it's nice
Yeah.
to think like rather than changing our lens, how can we just temporarily look through it and then move on?
Mhm.
So thank you.
Mhm. So I'd like to invite all of you to please make sure that you connect with me on LinkedIn. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, if you have any questions or if you want to talk about this some more, please let me know. I'm happy to have a conversation either through messaging or actually on Zoom or a phone call. I find really a lot of value in this work. No pun intended. I find a lot of can be really important work for people. And so I'm happy to have any conversation with any of you. So thank you very much for taking your time on a Tuesday evening to talk about stories and values.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernadette. This was fantastic. I appreciate you getting us all to think about this and tell our stories. It's valuable to take the time to think and reflect. So thank you for that. I'm going to stop the recording.
Mhm.